Hello, I'm Dave. I help businesses to use technology more effectively. And today I want to talk about cutting costs and technology. So if you're not a technical person and you've been tasked with the idea of cutting IT costs, or maybe you own the business or a director and you go, we need to cut costs. We need to cut costs now. Here are some tips. So the first thing that is really helpful to do is inventorize all of your equipment, all of your assets, your IT assets. Work out what you've got in terms of laptop, desktop, switches, routers, printers, network cabling, everything, all of that stuff. And then divide that by 5, and that gives you roughly an annual budget what you should be spending on IT in terms of hardware and infrastructure. Do the same thing with software. Work out what you're spending, what stuff you've bought outright, what stuff you've got on subscription. That gives you an idea of what you're spending at the moment per month or year or whatever in terms of IT, or at least what you should be spending. Then we've got projects, and obviously spending money on those, we want to make sure that they're delivering good value for money. And the problem with IT is a lot of projects fail, and then people keep going even after they've failed to spend money on them. Or they buy software, looks very good, brilliant, they deploy it, doesn't deliver, mostly because they don't implement it properly usually. So if you've got tools or duplicate tools, software that you're not using, that's a good opportunity to kind of go, do we need this? Is this actually helping us make the business more profitable? I was looking at something a couple of days ago. It wasn't a particularly expensive piece of software, but I worked out actually it would never pay for itself because the amount of money we'd spend on the tool was more than the labor to do the thing manually. So sometimes it's just not worth doing. Well, usually it is. Usually computers are about 10 times cheaper than people. So let's get into some specifics. What can we do? Right, so we've audited what we've got, but the next thing we can do is we've got software packages. Are we actually using them? Do we need them? Are we paying for people that have left? Extra licenses that we don't need? Audit these licenses. It's a really quick way to cut costs. And certainly when things come up for renewal, you don't be renewing software you're not using. Make sure there's somebody in your organization who's in charge of software purchases, or you'll find multiple people buy competing products. Really important to do this. Have a software matrix. You need it for Cyber Essentials anyway, along with your list of hardware, list of software that you should have default for everyone to have installed, and then departmental software. So you don't end up with 2 tools that do the same thing that 2 different departments have bought, because it just wastes money. Okay. Now, the most important thing in terms of risk is to not cut costs on cybersecurity. Now, this isn't a video about cybersecurity, but do remember there's a lot of things you can do that are quite cheap, inexpensive to do, that really cut your risk of a cyber breach. And cyber breach can cost 6 or 7 figures to recover from a small business, could cost more than your annual turnover. Not a risk to be taken lightly, probably the biggest risk to your business. So when you're cutting costs, if you're sweating assets, make sure you're not putting your cyber at risk. That's somewhere you really want to be investing. And then the second area of investing is making sure that you've got tools that are optimized. So if you've got manual processes, could we put software in place to quickly automate those? This isn't the same as kind of buying some long-term solution where you're going to change the way the business works, a digital transformation project. They're going to take longer. If you want to cut costs now, that's not going to help. Okay, I've got a long list here. I'm going to go through them. Shadow IT. So what that is if people in your organization are buying software, maybe they're charging it to different charge codes, you don't know about it. They're all buying their own versions of Zoom or Adobe or some web application, or your marketing team decided they need a new website, so they just buy some tool, they like squeeze it through. That's not good. So your IT department, whoever's in charge of purchasing for technology, they need to be very clear about what the process is to make it easy for people to acquire software and hardware, etc. If you've got a broken mouse, and this is a classic example, you don't want to have to waste half a day trying to troubleshoot it. That's why some companies have vending machines. You can go and get a new mouse or a new power supply for your laptop or whatever, because it costs so much money to get through this process. So you want to make sure you've got a simple process. People can get approval very quickly for software. It's like, yes, no, maybe. Okay. Staff expenditure. So are you paying out for things that the business shouldn't be paying for? If you've given your team credit cards, are they buying stuff? Are they buying software licenses on their credit cards that they're using? Are they subscribing to ChatGPT, for example, not through the business that you knew about, not through the IT department, but through some other expense process? Audit that, make sure it's not happening, funnel it back through IT, but make IT a facilitator to get things done, not a blocker. Okay. I mentioned earlier about using the tools that you have. There are a lot of ways that we can use tools to be more effective. So what's a really good thing to do is ask your team what they spend the most, each individual person, what they spend most of their time doing, and then ask the IT guys if there's a way that they could automate that process quickly, cheaply, or easily. And you'll almost certainly find there are whole people's jobs, sometimes teams of people, that there's already software in the business that does that thing, but they're not using it. So you could eliminate those people doing that task. Hopefully you can utilize them to do something else. But obviously payroll is your biggest cost. And then finally, we want to be future-proofing what we're doing. So we want to be looking at those digital transformation projects over the long term. What are we going to put in place? Are we going to have a ERP, a CRM system? Are we going to change our accounting system? Are we going to do more marketing, funnel marketing, all sorts of this stuff? Work out what the business problems, risks are, then find the opportunities where IT can move that forward. And obviously the big one at the moment is artificial intelligence. And everybody needs to be looking at that because it's fundamentally going to change the way we work over the next few years. So I hope that makes sense. So what you've got, your hardware, your software, make sure that you're not underspending on cybersecurity and you're not spending money on software that nobody's using or duplicate software. Make sure that you're keeping your IT costs under control and all the costs are going through IT and they are facilitating the business to use technology more effectively, which is what we want. That's what I help with. If you'd like to know more, please get in touch with me. Love to have a chat about how I can help you to use technology more effectively. Thanks so much for watching. Speak to you soon.